Okay, the next thing we're going to talk about is the control of the cell cycle. So the cell cycle is the cycle that the cell goes through once cellular division has been triggered. Okay? The cell cycle is the circular diagram with the different segments in it called G1, S, G2, and M. So in this cell cycle, we have multiple different checkpoints that the cell goes through in order to ensure cell division is happening properly. So the first checkpoint that the cell goes through, the cell is going to go from G0 into G1, which is the cell growth phase. During the cell growth phase, the cell is going to do what it sounds like. The cell is going to grow. During this stage, all of the organelles associated with that cell are going to work on replicating, and the cell is going to get larger in size. Okay? It's then going to go into its first checkpoint at G1. If it passes that checkpoint and everything looks good, it then goes on to S phase. S phase is the DNA synthesis phase. So it's during S phase that all of the genetic material are going to duplicate. So we need to make sure that there are then 2 sets of genetic material in order to allow mitosis to happen, because mitosis is the separation of the genetic material, the sister chromatid, into 2 separate cells. And so it's during S phase that that DNA synthesis is going to happen. The next phase is going to be G2. G2 is another growth phase. Again, the cell needs to replicate everything else in order to have all of the material copied and split into 2. We have a G2 checkpoint that's going to verify that everything has happened. If a cell were to fail one of these checkpoints, it would go through what is called natural or planned program cell death, which is called apoptosis. Apoptosis is programmed cell death, and it's going to prevent a improperly duplicated cell from continuing living, okay? If you have, just as a side note, if you have a failure of apoptosis to happen, a failure of this planned cell death or programmed cell death, that is one way that cancer is caused, okay? Okay, so if you pass the G2 checkpoint, it then goes into this M phase, okay? And M phase is mitosis, everything that we talked about in the previous recording, okay? So we've got multiple different controls in these cell cycles. I really want you guys to understand the different phases, what happens in the different phases, where the checkpoints are. We're not going to talk about these different cyclins so much. That is just a lot more detailed than I think you guys can handle right now, okay? So what I want you to take out of this is what phases happen in the cell cycle, what happens during all of those phases, including their checkpoints, and then really in detail, I want you guys to understand mitosis. If you missed the mitosis lecture or you're fuzzy on it, be sure you watch the videos in the book, or on YouTube there are tons and tons of wonderful videos that describe and animate everything that happens in mitosis, and we will have an entire lab on mitosis as well.